Okay, let's set the scene. It's February 1959. We're on this desolate, frozen slope way out in the Soviet Union's Ural Mountains. And this is where a story kicks off that becomes one of the most haunting, just truly disturbing mysteries of the entire 20th century. It all boils down to this one central question that has just fascinated and, frankly, terrified anyone who's looked into this case for the last 60-plus years. What on earth could make a team of pros abandon their only shelter in sub-zero temperatures? It just doesn't make sense. So, this is the scene that greeted the first search party. Just imagine it. The tent, half buried in snow, and strangely empty. All their stuff, boots, warm clothes, supplies, it's all just left behind. But here's the detail that sends a shiver down your spine. The tent had been sliced open from the inside. That's a clear sign of a desperate, panicked escape. To really get a handle on what happened, we need to go back a bit and meet the people who found themselves at the heart of this tragedy. Now, this was not a group of amateurs. We're talking about 9 students and graduates from the Ural Polytechnical Institute, all experienced hikers, led by 23-year-old Igor Dyatlov. And in this last photo ever taken of them, they seem totally capable, in good spirits, setting up camp on a mountain with a name that, in retrospect, is pretty ominous. In the local Mansi language, it's called Dead Mountain. Their expedition started out pretty normal. They traveled by train, truck, and then skis, pushing deeper and deeper into the wilderness. One of them, Yuri Yudin, had to turn back because of an illness, a real twist of fate that ended up saving his life. Then, on February 1st, their diaries tell us the weather got really bad. Snowstorms, whiteout conditions, which forced them to make a pretty fateful decision, to pitch their tent right on an exposed mountain slope. So when the group didn't come back on schedule, a massive search was launched. And what they found? Well, it was a scene of escalating horror that just defied any easy explanation. Searchers followed 9 sets of footprints, some made with only socks, some completely barefoot, leading away from the camp. A mile down, they found the first 2 bodies under a big pine tree, dressed only in their underwear, next to a fire that had gone out. Weirdly, branches high up the tree were broken, as if someone had scrambled up, maybe trying to get a better look at something. Then they found 3 more bodies, including Dyatlov's, scattered in the open, looking like they were desperately trying to crawl back to the tent. At this point, you're thinking, okay, it's tragic, but it's hypothermia. But believe me, the story was just getting started. Because 2 months later, everything changed. The last 4 hikers were finally found, buried deep in a ravine, and their cause of death was anything but simple hypothermia. They'd suffered absolutely catastrophic, violent injury. Just let that sink in for a second. The force of a car crash, that's what the medical examiner said. So the big question, the one that changes everything, is what in the middle of the empty, frozen wilderness could possibly do that to a human body? The injuries were just bizarre. I mean, their bodies were crushed, but with no external bruising, almost as if they'd been hit by an immense wave of pressure. One of the victims, Ludmila Dubinina, was missing her tongue. The original 1959 investigation was just shut down fast. The official cause of death was cryptically blamed on a compelling natural force, an answer that explains nothing, and it opened the floodgates for decades of speculation. Right. So with the official report being so useless, theories started popping up everywhere, and they ran the gamut from the logical to the truly terrifying. An early theory pointed the finger at the local Mansi people, but investigators shot that down pretty quickly. For one, there were no other footprints, no signs of a fight. And like the medical examiner said, that crushing force, it was way beyond what any human could do. A much more compelling theory, especially given that this was the height of the Cold War, was some kind of secret military activity. Another hiking group reported seeing these strange orange spheres in the sky that night. Traces of radiation were found on some of the hikers' clothing. And those internal injuries with no external wounds, Well, that's eerily consistent with the shock wave from a weapon like a parachute mine, which detonates in the air. For a lot of people who believe the military theory, this is the smoking gun. This weird light flare? It was the very last photo taken on one of the hikers' own cameras. Could this be one of those mysterious orange spheres that other people saw that night? All right, let's get a little scientific. Another theory suggests a natural but really bizarre phenomenon: infrasound. See, certain wind patterns can create a sound so low that you can't hear it, but its frequency can supposedly cause this intense, irrational panic. Could that be what drove them from the tent in a state of absolute terror? And of course, you can't have a great mystery without a more out there explanation. Some people believe the only thing that could account for that kind of incredible force, and maybe the missing tongue, was an encounter with a menk, the region's version of a yeti. But then, in 2019, Russian authorities actually reopened the case. And now, with some new science to back them up, they claim to have the official explanation. So, after 60 years, is the mystery finally solved? So in 2021, Swiss scientists came up with a very specific kind of avalanche theory, a delayed slab avalanche. They argued that 4 things created a perfect storm. First, the hikers cut into the slope, which weakened it. Second, there was already a hidden weak layer of snow. Third, strong winds piled even more snow on top of them. And then finally, hours later, while they were probably sleeping, a small, heavy slab of snow just broke loose and slammed right onto their tent. And here's how the science breaks it down. You can see how cutting into the slope created this deadly hazard. And to model the physics of the snow, the scientists used a tool you'd never expect: animation code that was originally developed for the Disney movie Frozen. No, seriously. And that code let them show exactly how the slab would have hit the hikers. The simulation showed that even a small slab, just 5 meters wide, could hit with the force of an SUV. And that could explain those car crash-like injuries. It would have slammed them against the hard skis they'd laid out under the tent floor, causing massive internal trauma without major external wounds, and without leaving a huge avalanche debris field. But the avalanche theory isn't a perfect fit. And skeptics have some pretty good lingering questions. Like, how could an avalanche leave skis and tent poles still standing? Why did the footprints show them walking calmly, not scrambling in a panic? And why on earth would experienced hikers run downhill right into a potential avalanche path instead of sideways to safety? Plus, it totally fails to explain the lead investigator's later admission that he was ordered by high-ranking officials to drop the whole flying spheres thing. So we're left here. We have a compelling scientific model that seems to explain the physical injuries, but it just can't account for some of the strangest behavior and the weird testimony. And that, maybe, is the real essence of the Dyatlov Pass incident. It's a story where even the most rational explanation feels incomplete, leaving just enough room for the mystery and our fascination with it to live on.